Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Sir, I need you to move. The words landed like a gavel in the quiet first-class cabin. Every head turned not because of the volume, but because of who it was aimed at. Row 2 amperes. Window seat. A black man in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, calm as midnight. He didn't move. Didn't blink. He just looked up, and the air changed. 2 flight attendants flanked him, one clutching a tablet, the other signaling for security. Behind them, a uniformed officer approached, heavy steps echoing against the carpet. Passengers shifted in their seats, the silence growing heavy thick enough to feel. "You're not cleared for this section," the attendant said, voice firm but trembling. He replied evenly, "Check the ticket again." Her jaw tightened. "We already did." Then came the captain. Straight posture, cold authority. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step into the galley while we sort this out." Ugh. The man in 2 amperes leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. His voice was low, unhurried, the kind of calm that unsettles power. "You have 45 minutes, he said. "Use them wisely." The officer frowned. "Excuse me?" But before he could respond, the man stood slow, deliberate, and the room seemed to shrink around him. He wasn't tall by intimidation, but by gravity. Every motion said, "I don't need to prove who I am." The camera would linger on his face here, the quiet storm in his eyes, the disbelief around him, the tension between authority and dignity. One woman whispered, "He's not yelling. Why does he look like he's in charge?" The officer took his arm. "Sir, you're being removed from first class." The man didn't resist, didn't plead. He just straightened his shirt cuff and walked escorted between uniforms down the narrow aisle. Passengers stared. Phone is tilted. A teenage boy mouthed to his mother. "What did he do?" She shook her head. "Nothing, baby. Nothing at all." From the cockpit, the captain's voice echoed through the intercom. "Cabine secure. Preparing for departure." But the man smiled a small, knowing smile that didn't belong to a victim. He leaned toward the nearest officer and said quietly, "You might want to delay that takeoff, because in 45 minutes, no one on this plane would forget his name." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The man they just dragged out of first class, on the airline he owns. They led him down the narrow aisle like a man without status. But status wasn't the problem, visibility was. Marcus Carter had spent 2 decades learning that power looked different depending on who was watching. Today, he wanted to see who was watching honestly. No tailored suit, no Rolex, no entourage. Just a white shirt, open collar, and quiet eyes that carried more authority than any uniform on board. The crew didn't know it yet, but the man they just escorted from first class wasn't a random traveler. He was one of the 3 majority shareholders of Horizon Air, the airline that owned this flight, this crew, and every paycheck attached to their names. He'd been investigating complaints for weeks, stories about mistaken identities, about how certain passengers, mostly people who looked like him, were denied seats they'd already paid for. Corporate PR called them isolated cases. Marcus called them a pattern, and he was done with patterns. Now, seated in the holding row near the galley, he watched as the same attendant who'd humiliated him laughed softly with the captain. She said, "We handled it professionally." The captain nodded. "Good call. Always trust your instinct." Marcus smiled faintly. Instinct, he thought. That's what they call prejudice when it wears a uniform. From his phone, he opened a secure channel labeled Protocol 7. Ugh. No one around him noticed. No one cared. That's the thing about invisibility, it works both ways. A message pinged back almost instantly. Rachel. "Standing by, sir." "Confirm trigger?" Marcus. "Not yet. Let them finish what they started." He set the phone face down and looked out the window. Ground crew moved like clockwork below, loading baggage, fueling tanks, sealing doors. From this height, it looked peaceful. But in 40 minutes, that peace would break. Because the man they just labeled non-compliant didn't come here to fly. He came to listen to every word, every whisper, every reason someone thought he didn't belong. And when it was done, the whole system that enabled it would feel turbulence like never before. Somewhere over the intercom, the attendant's voice echoed again. "Cabin secure." Marcus exhaled slowly, almost smiling. "Yes," he murmured to himself. Secure for now. Oh, by the time the cabin door sealed, the temperature had shifted not in degrees, but in tone. The air itself felt judgmental. From the galley, Marcus could hear them laughing. The attendant's voice, Nicole, her badge, said rang out like glass breaking. Some people just think they can buy first class. The others chuckled. One of them added, "Not dressed like that, he can't." He heard it all, every syllable landing where it was meant to hurt. Marcus sat still, hands folded. To anyone glancing his way, he looked calm. To anyone listening closely, he was recording. His phone lay on his lap, microphone live, capturing every careless word they threw like darts. Rachel's voice buzzed quietly in his earpiece. "Audio feed clear, sir. Continue observation." "Continue," Marcus said. "No interference yet." The plane began to taxi. The hum of engines rose, covering whispers and arrogance alike. Nicole passed his row again, her eyes sharp, her voice too sweet. "Sir, we'll need you to remain seated. The captain doesn't want disruptions." He looked up, slow. "Is that what this was?" he asked. "A disruption?" Nicole blinked. "You people always make it one." Her smile was professional. Her words were poison. Across the aisle, a young white passenger frowned. "She really just say that?" he muttered to his girlfriend. "Shh," she whispered. "Don't get involved." But he kept looking, watching. Marcus turned back to the window. Outside, the world moved, ground lights sliding past like streaks of consequence. Inside, injustice sat comfortably in uniform. He remembered another flight, years ago. 26, just starting out, sitting in coach with a laptop full of dreams. The flight attendant that day had skipped him 3 times when serving drinks. Back then, he let it go. Back then, he didn't own the airline. This time, silence wasn't surrender. It was evidence. Nicole's voice came over the intercom, brittle with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Horizon Air Flight 407. We appreciate your cooperation as we maintain a professional cabin environment." Marcus smiled to himself, slow, deliberate. The engines roared, wheels lifted, and the city fell away beneath them. He whispered under his breath, "Let's see how professional you feel at 30,000 feet. The seatbelt light chimed. Rows of passengers relaxed into silence, scrolling screens and sipping from paper cups. But in row 21, near the galley wall, Marcus Carter sat perfectly still, the calmest man on a plane that was about to change history. Nicole moved down the aisle with mechanical grace, her smile frozen into service. Every time she passed his seat, she pretended not to see him. That, Marcus knew, was the oldest trick of all. Pretend the problem isn't there until it speaks. He had no reason to speak, not yet. He had reason to listen. From a few rows ahead, a woman whispered, "Isn't that the guy they pulled out of first class?" Her husband replied, "Yeah, must have been some kind of mistake." "Or not," she muttered. They looked sure. Marcus looked down at his hands, steady, still, the same hands that had signed billion-dollar contracts, that had built an airline from scraps and skepticism. Now they rested quietly on his knees, as if testing patience itself. Rachel's voice slid through his earpiece, soft but firm. "Boardroom monitoring link is live. Do you want to intervene?" "Not yet," he whispered. "Let them keep talking." The captain's door opened. Marcus caught a glimpse of the cockpit order, power, hierarchy, all the things they believed he didn't have. Nicole leaned into the doorway, laughing. "We had a fake VIP earlier. Thought he owned the seat." Someone inside responded, too faint to hear. She smirked. "I know, right? Bold move." Marcus exhaled slowly, the sound barely audible over the hum of altitude. He'd studied prejudice long enough to recognize its pattern, the confidence of the comfortable, the blindness of those in control. They never looked up until the world flipped. A young flight attendant, Mia, her name tag red, brushed past, dropping a napkin near his seat. She bent to pick it up, whispered quickly, "I saw what happened. It was wrong." Marcus didn't turn his head, just murmured, "Keep your head up and keep watching." Mia nodded, eyes darting nervously, then moved on. The engines settled into cruise mode. Outside the window, the sky was a sheet of velvet blue. Inside, the tension hummed like static waiting for a storm. Marcus lifted his phone slightly, thumb hovering over one icon, Protocol 7. One tap, and every word, every recording, every timestamp would reach Horizon Air's corporate ethics board in real time. He paused. Not yet. Every system needed proof, not emotion. The captain's voice broke through the cabin speaker again. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin beverage service shortly. Sit back and enjoy the flight. Polite, smooth, blind. Marcus closed his eyes and smiled faintly. Enjoy the flight. They always said that even when the plane was headed straight into turbulence, he opened his eyes again, gaze sharp now, voice almost a whisper. Enjoy it while it lasts. Outside, the clouds looked soft. Inside, a reckoning had already begun, quiet, measured, unstoppable. The first phone rose halfway through the cabin. A quiet click, a faint red glow someone was recording. Mia, the young attendant, wasn't the only one who had seen. 3 rows ahead, a passenger in a gray hoodie college kid, early 20s, whispered to his friend. Yo, I think that's the guy they kicked out of first class. His friend frowned. For real? What did he do? Nothing. Just sat there. The lens shifted slightly, catching Marcus in profile. His calm looked rehearsed, too composed for a man just humiliated. That alone made the kid press record harder. Nicole noticed the camera instantly. Her tone sharpened. Sir, no filming, please. Up. The kid didn't stop. Why not? You threw him out for sitting down. A few nearby passengers glanced up, curious, cautious. Energy began to change. Marcus didn't move, didn't look back. He knew visibility was more powerful than volume. And right now, truth had a lens. Mia approached quietly, pretending to collect cups. She leaned down, whispering, People are watching now. Marcus replied, low and steady. Good. Let them see how justice begins. Across the aisle, an older woman mouthed, This isn't right. Her husband shook his head, pulling her hand down. Don't get involved. But she already had. She turned toward Nicole and said, You treated him like he didn't belong. That's on you. The whole cabin froze. Nicole blinked, caught between authority and exposure. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Marcus tilted his head slightly, eyes forward, voice barely a breath. And now, the camera rolls. Nicole's composure cracked. For the first time, she wasn't sure who was running this cabin, her or the silence closing in. The passengers who'd been whispering now stared openly. A few phones glowed in trembling hands, half hidden behind seat backs. The captain stepped out from the cockpit, authority stitched into every button on his uniform. What's going on here? Nicole straightened. Passenger in row 21, refusing instructions, filming unauthorized. The kid in the hoodie muttered, That's not what happened. The captain ignored him. His gaze landed on Marcus. Sir, I'm Captain Pierce. I've been informed there was an issue with your ticket. Marcus didn't answer right away. He studied the man, the tone, the posture, the practiced calm that hides a bias. Finally, he said, Issue's been resolved. You just don't know it yet. The captain frowned. Excuse me? Nicole jumped in. He's trying to intimidate the crew. Mia's voice cut through, soft but firm. He hasn't said a single threat. Nicole turned on her. Stay out of this, trainee. The word trainee dripped with disdain. Marcus remained seated, elbows on knees, voice level. Every time someone speaks up, you silence them. That's not policy. That's fear. The cabin went still. Even the engine sounded distant. From the front row, a man in a business suit called out, She's right. You can't just film crew members. Another passenger snapped back. Yeah? You can't kick someone out for looking broke either. The murmurs spread, conflict rippling like static down the aisle. The captain raised his hand. Enough. We'll handle this internally. He leaned toward Marcus. Sir, you'll remain seated until we land. Security will meet you at the gate. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. Security? Standard protocol, the captain said, voice tight. Marcus nodded once. Slow, deliberate. Then activate it, he said. Let the record show what standard looks like. Nicole froze. Record? Marcus tapped his phone screen, the soft beep echoing louder than any shout. Rachel's voice came through his earpiece, clear as glass. Confirmation received, sir. Protocol 7 is active. The captain frowned. What did you just do? Marcus looked up, eyes steady, voice quiet enough to make everyone lean closer. Exactly what you think I couldn't. Mia's hand trembled as she gripped the beverage cart. Nicole took a step back, uncertainty flickering behind control. And somewhere in the cockpit, an alert pinged the kind that only corporate oversight could send. Marcus leaned back in his seat, calm again. Keep flying, he said. You'll want to remember this altitude. The tension in the cabin could be heard now, not spoken, but vibrating between breaths. Engines hummed steady. Hearts didn't. Nicole's voice rose above the quiet. "Captain, I can't work under these conditions. He's making me uncomfortable." Marcus didn't move. He just tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Uncomfortable?" he said softly. "Because I didn't leave when told?" The captain's patience thinned. "Sir, please cooperate." "I am cooperating," Marcus replied, calm as a verdict. "I'm sitting where you placed me, quietly, respectfully." He looked around. That used to be enough. The captain turned to the intercom. "Cabin, prepare for potential security contact upon landing." A wave of whispers swept through the rows. Someone muttered, "They're really calling security on him?" Another said, "For what? Sitting down?" Nicole stepped closer, clipboard tight against her chest. "Until we land, you'll remain under crew supervision." Her voice trembled beneath authority. She reached forward, fingertips grazing Marcus's sleeve, and that single touch shattered the fragile line between protocol and prejudice. Gasps erupted. A passenger shouted, "You can't put your hands on him!" Mia froze, eyes wide. Marcus stayed still, but his expression changed. Not anger, not fear, but something colder. Consequence. He turned his wrist slightly. The cuff of his sleeve slid back, revealing a black titanium watch, the only luxury he wore today. The screen lit up, displaying a single message. "Corporate board. Live feed active." Rachel's voice in his ear was steady. "Board members connected, sir. They can see and hear everything." "Thank you, Rachel." Marcus rose slowly, every motion deliberate. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as turbulence brushed the wings. He looked at Nicole, her hand still half raised, her face draining of color. "You touched me," he said quietly, "in front of witnesses, while the system was live." Nicole stammered. I didn't mean." "But you did," Marcus interrupted, calm and final. "That's what makes it truth." The captain took a step forward, but Marcus turned first. "Don't," he said. "This plane is already under review. Every camera, every mic, every policy." Passengers looked around, a dozen phones recording now, a dozen stories waiting to spread. Nicole's hand dropped to her side. The silence after was almost sacred. Marcus sat back down, eyes on the horizon outside the window. "You called me a disruption," he said, voice low enough to shake the room. "I call this accountability." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The quiet itself was listening. He unlocked his phone and spoke barely above a whisper. "Rachel, initiate Phase 2. Confirm identity broadcast." A short tone beeped, soft but undeniable. The intercom lights flickered for half a second, then stabilized. From the cockpit, the captain's radio squawked unexpectedly. He frowned. "What the hell?" Rachel's voice came through Marcus's earpiece, crisp, unwavering. "Confirmed. Live identity verification uploaded to corporate network. All command staff notified." "And the board?" Marcus asked. "Watching." Nicole's clipboard slipped from her hands. The pages fluttered like panic in motion. "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus looked at her, calm, focused, surgical. "The man whose signature appears on your paycheck." The captain's face hardened. "That's impossible." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Try me." He gestured toward the cockpit door. "Check your control screen." Pierce hesitated, then disappeared inside. Seconds later, the sound of his voice carried down the aisle, low, stunned. "Identity flag executive tier Horizon Holdings?" The co-pilot whispered. "That's the parent company, sir." Pierce stepped back into the cabin, pale. This must be a system error." Marcus stood now, slow, deliberate, gravity following every move. "No," he said. "The error already happened. You just made it public." Rachel's voice chimed in again. "Sir, company legal is on standby. Would you like to suspend active crew authority?" "Affirmative," Marcus said. "Lock all credentials for personnel present. Effective immediately." In the cockpit, alarms pinged, crew logins flashing red, digital access revoked in real time. Nicole grabbed her badge. Its LED turned crimson, lifeless. The captain's tablet screen blinked. Accesses terminated. Gasps filled the cabin. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" A businessman muttered, "He just fired them midair." Another replied, "No, he's grounding the whole damn plane." Marcus turned toward the passengers, voice even but resonant. "No one's losing their life today, just their illusion of power." He sat again, fastening his seatbelt. Outside, Clouds rolled endless and white. Inside, the hierarchy had collapsed quietly, completely. The cabin had never been this silent. No hum of gossip, no nervous laughter, just a stillness that felt heavier than gravity. Phones kept recording, though no one seemed sure why anymore. Captain Pierce stood frozen near the cockpit door, his authority unraveling with every blink. Nicole clutched her badge, the small red light pulsing like guilt. Even Mia, wide-eyed, trembling, couldn't look away. Marcus rose. The movement was slow, deliberate, final. Every head turned as if gravity itself was following him. He took one step forward, then another, until he stood in the aisle between rows of witnesses. "Let's make this simple," he said, voice low but resonant. "I'm Marcus Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Holdings, the parent company that owns this airline, this fleet, and this flight." Ugh. A wave of disbelief broke through the rows. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." The kid in the hoodie blurted, "Bro, he owns the plane?" Nicole shook her head, denial fighting for air. "No, you can't," Marcus interrupted gently. "You can check. Your system already did." The captain's tablet buzzed again, screen lighting up with corporate confirmation. Executive authority verified. Marcus D. Carter, CEO. His shoulders sank. "Jesus." Marcus turned toward the passengers. "You all saw how this started," he said evenly. "How quick judgment travels when someone doesn't fit the picture of power." His eyes moved back to Nicole. "That's why I fly unannounced. Because bias doesn't recognize a title, it just looks for an excuse." Nicole's lip trembled. "Sir, I was only following procedure." "Procedure?" Marcus echoed. "Show me the one that tells you what a first-class passenger should look like." No one spoke. The engines hummed, filling the space where excuses used to live. Mia stepped forward, voice shaking but clear. "He's telling the truth. I was there. He showed his ticket. You ignored him." Marcus nodded slightly. "Thank you, Mia." Then, louder to the captain, "You'll land this aircraft at the nearest hub. Corporate control will handle the rest." Pierce swallowed. "Understood, sir." Marcus turned back to the passengers, the people who had just watched prejudice crumble. "You can keep recording," he said, "because this isn't about humiliation. It's about correction." And as the plane banked slightly toward its new heading, the truth settled in. The man they'd dismissed as nobody owned everything around them, and he had just rewritten the flight plan. It hit them like sudden turbulence. Not the kind that rattles the wings, the kind that collapses certainty. Nicole's knees weakened. She caught herself on the beverage cart, eyes wide, mouth open but soundless. Her badge still blinked red, like a heartbeat that wouldn't quit. Across the aisle, Captain Pierce stared at his hands, the same hands that had gripped authority minutes ago, now shaking in quiet disbelief. Mia stood frozen near the bulkhead, torn between fear and awe. Every passenger watched, half in shock, half in vindication. The hum of the engines became the only noise between justice and regret. Marcus hadn't raised his voice once, yet the room obeyed his silence. He turned to Nicole. "Do you remember what you said when I asked for my seat?" Her lips trembled. "Sir," he finished for her. "This section is for first-class guests only." He let the words hang in the air like smoke. "Now you understand why that sentence never belonged to you." Nicole's eyes welled. "Please, I didn't know." "That," Marcus said softly, "is exactly the problem." The captain tried to recover what dignity he could. "Sir, I accept full responsibility." Marcus looked at him, steady, unreadable. "You mean now that the cameras are on?" Pierce flinched, the truth cutting deeper than any reprimand. From the cabin, murmurs rose, passengers who had filmed now whispering things like, "She really said that," and "He handled it better than anyone could." "Oh." The kid in the hoodie looked at Marcus with wide eyes. "Man, I've never seen someone stay that calm." Marcus nodded once. "Calm isn't weakness. It's the sound of power deciding when to speak." Rachel's voice returned in his earpiece, firm and distant. "Corporate control online. Local authorities briefed. Press already asking questions." Marcus exhaled. "Let them." Nicole covered her face, whispering apologies no one could hear. Pierce stood beside her, his posture collapsing under invisible weight. Even the businessman from row 1, the one who'd defended the crew earlier, couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. "Don't look ashamed because I'm in charge," Marcus said quietly. "Be ashamed because it took this much for you to believe it." No one spoke after that. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of realization. Mia broke it first, voice barely a whisper. "Sir, what happens now?" Marcus looked toward the horizon outside the window, where light was breaking through the clouds. "Now," he said, "now we land." Marcus stayed standing as the plane descended into the first streaks of dawn. Every face that had looked down on him minutes ago now waited for forgiveness, or for the sound of consequence. He didn't raise his tone. He simply pressed his thumb to the screen of his phone. "Rachel," he said, "execute the disciplinary protocol. Effective immediately." A pause. Then her voice came crisp and absolute. "Confirmed. Captain Pierce, flight lead. Nicole Harper status suspended. Access revoked. Legal notified." The cockpit door chimed once, then locked. Pierce looked down at his ID badge. Its LED blinked once before going dark. Nicole's tablet restarted with a cold black screen that read, "Unauthorized user." The hush that followed wasn't confusion, it was recognition. Marcus turned to the crew. "From this moment, you are relieved of duty. You'll disembark with the passenger manifest when we land. Corporate will meet you at the gate." Nicole swallowed, her voice small. "Sir, please, I have a family." "So do the people you humiliate when you think no one's watching," he replied. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual. It hit harder because of that. Mia stepped forward, hesitant. "Sir, what about me?" Marcus's expression softened. "You spoke the truth when it cost you something. You'll be fine." She nodded, tears caught between fear and gratitude. Across the aisle, passengers whispered, phones still recording, eyes wide. Someone muttered, "He's really doing it." Another answered, "He already did." The captain tried one last time to save face. "Sir, I request the opportunity to explain my actions." Marcus turned slowly. "You had the opportunity. You used it to stay silent." Then he tapped his earpiece again. "Ground control. This is Marcus Carter. Divert flight 407 to Horizon Headquarters Terminal. Request immediate landing clearance." The reply came instantly. "Affirmative, Mr. Carter." Runway cleared. "Welcome home, sir." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Welcome home to the same plane that had tried to exile him midair. Marcus looked around the cabin one last time. "You can stop filming," he said. "Justice doesn't need to go viral to exist." He adjusted his cuffs, sat back down, and buckled his seatbelt. Outside the window, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, thin, bright, inevitable. Inside, the hierarchy had been rewritten at 30,000 feet, and as the plane began its descent, every person on board understood. The calmest man in the room had just grounded the entire flight and the system that allowed it. The wheels kissed the runway with a shuddering sigh. For a moment, it was just sound and gravity, the slow surrender of flight to Earth. Then came the silence. Note relief. Note applause. Something heavier. Awareness. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt while the others stayed frozen, as if movement might break whatever spell justice had cast. Through the window, Horizon Air officials waited at the tarmac, legal, HR, corporate security, all watching the plane they no longer controlled. The captain's voice cracked through the intercom one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived safely. Please remain seated." But even he knew the line wasn't his anymore. Marcus stood, collected his jacket, and looked down the aisle, the same stretch of carpet where he'd been escorted out of first class less than an hour ago. Now, it looked different. Now, every step forward sounded like authority returning home. Nicole kept her head bowed. Pierce stared at the floor, his command gone quiet. Passengers parted instinctively as Marcus walked past, no one daring to speak except Mia. She whispered, "Sir, thank you." He paused beside her, voice low. "Don't thank me. Just remember." At the cabin door, the lead ground officer saluted. "Mr. Carter, all procedures complete. The crew will be escorted off separately." Marcus nodded once. "Make sure they're treated fairly. That's more than they gave me." He stepped onto the jet bridge. Phones still recording caught only fragments, the calm stride, the silhouette in morning light. Outside, cameras waited. Reporters, corporate reps, a swirl of noise. Marcus didn't stop for any of them. He adjusted his cufflinks, looked into the nearest lens, and spoke with the same even tone he'd carried from the start. "Power doesn't shout, it just lands harder." The crowd went still. That was the quote that would run on every screen, every headline, every debate about dignity and bias and what justice looks like at 30,000 feet. He turned away, walking toward the black car waiting at the edge of the runway. Rachel met him there, tablet in hand. "All handled, sir. Crew suspended, investigation logged, media statement drafted." Marcus nodded, sliding his phone into his pocket. Good. Let the story speak for itself. Ugh. As he entered the car, the engines of Flight 407 powered down behind him, grounded, silent, accountable. The sunrise painted the fuselage gold. Marcus glanced back once, then forward again. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it just touched down, smooth, steady, unforgettable.